a power in who has the ability to tell the story.
We did that.
Yes, I saw it. That's thank you for letting because too often someone else is telling someone else's story, right? And that's a really critical lateness piece, and that's especially history, right? So who is writing? I love that we're in like a perfect room for this exercise. What is your story? And there's this quote over here: write what should not be forgotten. You know, these ideas of that we all are historians all of the time.
Yeah,
well, we have a wonderful class.
Right back up.
Oh, hi, welcome.
Thank you. Yes, you're right.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank
That's
you.
a good one.
Yeah.
You're sitting on the floor.
That's okay.
Were there other observations that you might initially be able to identify where they fit into that, or maybe you just want to share about something you learned?
I guess I think of global citizenship. Well, actually several of them, history, well, a bunch of them, just the story of migration and immigration and how names got from one place to another in this country and families taking them on. I just find that fascinating, and I think we both talked about that.
Did anybody have a story of trying to go back and find their name in the location? So part of my story when I've done this exercise is I have a very unusual Irish last name that you don't see much in the US, but there's a little village that it's from, so you can go to the village and actually see the name on things. So that was part of
Oh, that's cool.
my story. Yeah, global citizenship is in history. Other? Yes.
So Laura, her name, where her name comes from is really interesting, I think it's interesting about who she is now, because it was chosen because of Laura Ingalls Wilder, and she's an English.
I'm an English
teacher.
teacher.
That's it.
Yeah. So her parents enjoyed that, and then they also loved the strong sound of the AU and the A at the end of her name, as opposed to like an O sound making the ah for Laura. But her grandmother, interestingly enough, did not share her mother's sentiment about the A sound at the end of their name and called her Laurie for her entire life. And I thought it was interesting bringing in the relationship of her family and that not everyone had the same, even though they were part of the same family unit, had the same perspective on her name and how she should be called. Her middle name comes from her mother's first name, which draws down that relationship. But her dad was very disappointed when her name was used as an initial, her middle name was used as an initial on her graduate school diploma, because it drew on her mom's legacy.
Yeah, my mom had passed away, so when they called my name, and I don't know why, right? When they called my name, it was Laura A. Brown instead of Laura Ann Brown, and it was like my mom wasn't walking with me. So.
Thank you for sharing. That has a wonderful collective identity piece of it too, right? That there are this circle that you belong to, and that continuation of carrying on the history of one person through how you live, or I have a baby growing in here too, we've been doing that name fighting and thinking about how it will grow on. I'm particularly interested if anybody had stories to share about experiences as a student with their name. Graduation kind of hits on that one. Did anybody? Go ahead.
Well, my name's Isabel, which is a popular name today, but when I was growing up, it was not, and I hated them. I wanted to be Mary or Susie or whatever the names were back then, and I shared how, it's a privilege to have the name, which is my grandmother's name today. So,
yeah.
Jerry had shared with me that she had been named after, I guess, a personal history after an uncle, and that she, when she was young, did not like her name, and she was confused sometimes by educators or teachers or the bus driver in particular, because it also can be a boy's name.
Go ahead.
So my first name is Rachel, and when I was in public school, elementary school, I was one of many Rachels. I was Rachel K, there was Rachel S, Rachel L, and when I switched to an all-girls private school, I was the only Rachel in the grade. And all of a sudden, I wasn't Rachel K anymore, I was just Rachel, and I felt like I could finally just be, you know, be myself as opposed to one of many, and the same thing happened at, you know, at camp too, you know, Rachel K, and to finally, you know, come into my own in a place where there weren't other, there were no other Rachels. It was really nice.
My name is Maya, and growing up I was always the only one. I didn't meet another Maya until I was an adult, and I'd been an adult for a while. But I always thought that was really cool. I never felt like people judged me because of it, especially in the school setting, where I did find some disgust was in skating. I'm a figure skater. And it was always pronounced wrong. It was always Maya. And it always drove me crazy because we had to, on applications, phonetically spell our name out so that they could appropriately announce us. And it was still always mispronounced Maya. And being one of the only Black figure skaters in the community, it drew more attention that it was mispronounced. So that always bothered me. But in school it never.
Yes.
So my name's Alethea, and I remember I was telling Allison, like, the first day of school, just having the tension, just knowing there's no way the person is going to, like, get this right. You just know, right? And remembering the teachers who did, like, you know, remember the teachers who really either got it right the first time or made it a concerted effort. But I went to a school that was predominantly Black, and I remember either substitute teachers or sometimes even the teachers, like, if someone had a name that they felt, I guess, was stereotypically Black, like having this teachers like scoffing or laugh or having like a reaction to it that I recall very vividly. You know, being like, oh, that's Latoya, that's not Shatoya, or whatever. In this way that I remember people, like the anxiety of a substitute teacher was like very real for us because we knew that someone was going to mispronounce someone's name and not be humble about it. They would just kind of be like, oh, whatever, and go to the next person.
So after I did, thank you everybody for sharing and for listening. After I did this exercise recently, I realized I teach at a HBCU, a historically Black college, during the year, and that the pronunciation of my students' names intimidates me so much that I call them their last names because I'm more likely to be, and I had never made that observation before, but I feel really bad about calling someone their name and mispronouncing it because nobody ever gets my last name correct. But whereas I could make the goal of, and memorizing sound is really difficult for me, so it's also not going to be my skill that I'm going to get it right. And I also have like 175 students that are different every semester. But it changed my commitment of thinking about, well, first name is much more of your identity, and specifically with African Americans, where the last name potentially was defined their ownership at some point in their history, right? So there are lots of different pieces of history and power and relationships, that global connectedness that we have, and then also how do I hold these conflicting sets? I mean, even just my experience of I want to not pronounce it incorrectly, but I also have like, 4 Smiths and 6 Edwards, and so when I'm saying the last name, they have a name that I could use that would identify them without using the multiple name kind of scenario. I was always an extra. Rachel and Kristen were really big during our generation. So the big idea is create this kind of offering of thinking about how can I go deeper into these conversations that are really uncomfortable. And what we want to spend the last couple of minutes sharing is how might you guys engage in this work, and what Nova's project has done once we came up with the big ideas was how could we get this more into classrooms. And one of the things I realized was that it is really hard to change your thinking, especially your idea of your own personal privilege, when you're still inside your privileged bubble, right? That you're more often, when you get out of it or are forced to be uncomfortable, that do these kind of big awakenings happen, and it helps shift. I was teaching pre-service teachers, my multi-education in the classroom course, They give me wonderful lessons, I have them all the next semester, they'd all go back to their original thinking. It was, I needed something that was going to help make that switch of seeing the world in a different way. And for me, travel has always been that piece. And that I learned far less about the other culture, and I learned much more about what it means to be from the United States, and to have the different privileges that I have. So, so Novus has developed these summer programs for educators where we take teachers on global service trips. They learn and they go through the global action model, so you learn the service learning model as you're going through the program. We partner with community partners. You get to see a very transparent facilitator of us telling you what's going on behind the scenes as we're fostering these relationships over the last couple of years. And then we do a service project or an engagement project with the community. And so one of the programs that we do is in Savannah, Georgia, where I'm based, and the Low Country, and this program is called Race, Power, and the Preservation of African American and Gullah Geechee History in Savannah. Is anybody familiar with Gullah Geechee? So on the barrier islands between southern North Carolina and northern Florida, after emancipation, the plantations that were there were abandoned for the most part because of malaria, mosquitoes being so bad, and the crops that were grown on those islands were indigo and rice, which was a very specialty skill that needed to be cultivated, which meant that Africans were captured from particular areas who knew how to grow those crops and then brought over. And so there's this amazing preservation of African diaspora from like the Sierra Leone region to these barrier islands. And they remained separated from the mainland for the last 150 years. Most of them you still have to take boats to get over. So there's this preservation of culture, and they have a distinct Creole, which is called Gola, and a particularly unique picture of history within the United States, and a group of people that are being forced off their land rapidly with the increase of property taxes, coastal islands. So I'm sure you're familiar with Hilton Head and some of those other places. Those are all Gullah islands that are now resort towns. So this 5-day program, we work with Sister B, like I mentioned, that's one of the heritage museums. We visit Sapelo Island and listen to community members talk about their experiences and show us some of the different cultural elements like basket weaving and some of the innovations that they're doing to try to preserve enough of an economy that citizens can still live there and maintain living there. And this program is particularly wonderful if you're thinking about how could I build a partnership within my local community in this very kind of ethically responsible way of fostering community partnership. And our other, here's some pictures. This is tabby, which was it's oyster shells and a limestone that's put together, and you see it developed in many parts of from Africa, from the west to the east. And so this skill was brought over by enslaved Africans, and these are the old slave quarters. And this is the oldest African American Baptist church in the United States, and that's the cottage that we work with, and their sister. And Lavonda's going to tell us about the Dominican Republic.
Okay, so I had the wonderful opportunity last summer to participate in the Dominican Republic program, which was led by Kristen, and as you can imagine, after hearing her today, it was an absolutely amazing experience for me because I got to learn everything that you all got to hear today in an international context. And so we applied the big ideas to the setting that we were in. And the program is called Building Global Connections, Examining Power, Privilege, Gender, and Race in a Global Context. And I'm mostly going to speak from my personal experience just because you've got a lot of the details up here. But one large component of the program, in addition to sort of each evening reflecting on the big ideas that we saw in our community service work during the day, was working with the Mariposa DR Foundation, which is an organization in a city called Cabarete, and it is an organization for girls, all girls, and it is a summer program. And one of the things I know that Kristen has said over and over, with me in our conversations, and was mentioned today, is that she's really big on working with organizations who have the answers already, and have it so we can model after them, we can go in and learn from them. And Mariposa is definitely one of those organizations. So they work, again, with girls, I believe from 8 up until about 18 years old. And specifically during the summer, the girls are there every single day, doing a variety of activities. They had like reading lessons, we got to participate. We actually got to teach the girls lessons and things like that. But the biggest point or part of the program was getting to know them and getting to know their community. So we didn't just come in, volunteer at the school, do painting or something, and sort of go, but we had conversations with the parents. We walked through the community and engaged with families, and we got to see firsthand what the day-to-day experiences were like for the students. Prior to our arrival, there was an online, an e-learning component where we were reading texts and articles and having to comment online on what we had read. And so having the opportunity, having all of that background, and then actually being able to go, and then even afterwards, maintaining those conversations was, points back to sort of having a relationship. So for us to just arrive and have sort of minimal background, would have been great, but I mean, we were really looking at what are the issues here, and why are they happening, and we studied the government and things like that, and it really gave us a lot of insight. And these are just some of the photos here of the students. The one story I want to share is about this little girl here. Her name is Alvarosa. And very impressive. She is the reason why, sort of an example of why the Mariposa Foundation works so well. If we had the opportunity to sort of view her, walk to the community, meet families. We actually went and to a chocolate farm. We ate with the family. I mean, it was just an amazing experience. This young lady here, she is there every single day, and she takes what she has learned every day and goes back home into this community where she lives, and these are all of her students. She gathers all the kids, even adults, children, and they bring their chairs and they sit. And she instructs them on everything that she has learned. And I mean, they are there really like ready to learn. I mean, this is school, and so she is the teacher in her community. So she reaches out, to those that can't, the boys that can't participate, the women who are adults who can't participate. I mean, she is there and she's giving back. And I think it points to, Mariposa's mission of, the stats about educating a girl. So if you educate a girl who was living in generational poverty, you can change her entire life trajectory. I mean, with education, she's likely to marry later in life, if at all. She has fewer children. There are just so many stats. And so she is just, again, a great example. She is one of many, many examples of how, as these girls are becoming, as they are learning and the information that they're learning from every aspect of whether it's their physical health, their, they get dental visits. There's so many different things that they do in addition to just book learning. I mean, they're treating the whole child. They also, another thing that I appreciate about Mariposa is that because they really gave thought to how to work with the community. So the thing was, we can bring the girls, but if they don't, what they found was that, if the parents, they haven't eaten, for example, the girls, aren't going to be able to make it. So, they feed them their breakfast in the morning, but also they invite all of the female family members there because they were finding that many of the times the girls were staying home to take care of maybe a sibling or to help out with chores. So literally you will see moms and children that are all part of the, the organization. So in addition to, again, all of the studying the big ideas and how they were applied to Mariposa, we, have the opportunity to, just to sit each night, reflect, debrief. And it was a very powerful experience because of all of those things. And everyone that participated last year, I mean, we walked away feeling like this was more than just that, Kristen, you always say you want to take it to, with the community engagement, not just sort of going in and coming out, but really being responsive, culturally responsive to the needs of the community. So, thank you.
So now we have just a couple more minutes if anybody has any questions. Thank you for your time. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just had 2 questions about what the program, the Mariposa program. Is it, you were there in the summer, is this a program that's a year-round program?
Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear on that, right. It is for 7 days. I don't know if it's on there.
The Mariposa Foundation
The
is.
foundation.
Oh, the foundation, oh yeah, all around, year round,
So
yes.
this, so you were just there for one of the weeks, but
Yes,
this is something
And,
that's
and
ongoing.
in the summer, yes. And they actually pay for the girls during the school year. I think after third grade in the Dominican Republic, their school is no longer public education. You have to pay to go, and so they send all of the girls, they cover their tuition to go to school during the school year.
And then my other question was just, so from your experience, the 7 days, how does that transfer to what you're doing here?
Oh my gosh, in so many ways. And so it was interesting because as a Spanish teacher, I sort of thought I was going I mean, in my mind, it's a combination because I'm also diversity coordinator. All those things are important to me. But I think the big ideas absolutely translate back into my classroom. And specifically, just an example, when we were doing the lesson on the homes. There are times where it's a planned, integrated thing, but then also really helping the girls to see, oh, you know, someone can live in a car, and really taking in the big ideas, like why is that, thinking about history and power and all those things. So I apply those themes, definitely. And ultimately, I'm hoping to continue partnering on my own, like doing work with my post, because I've established great relationships there, just individually, in addition to what Kristen.
And I'll share that we had quite a lot of elementary school teachers who participated last year, but we also often have teachers who coordinate the travel programs for their older students who are looking for a new model of how do we do more ethically responsible service trips, both domestically and internationally. And we don't offer programs for students. I'm not willing to go to the liability there quite yet, but it's a great way to learn the model and then implement it in your school. Yeah.
Will we, I think I know the answer, but just to confirm, will we have access to your presentation? Aren't we getting like?
Yes, you
slides
are.
with all
And
that?
all of the big ideas and everything is on our website too. It's already there. And we're holding our next think tank, which will be creating actual tangible activities to go with each of the big ideas to start at the different grade levels. That happens in June. And so there'll be an ebook and this toolkit that'll come out, and all of our resources are free. Yes.
What is this experience? You talked about how it helped you in the classroom and your learning. How does this translate towards Hathaway Brown's initiatives or goals or aims or vision? How does this fulfill that for the school?
Right, well, I know, we have another, Maya who's here too, but I know we have a global citizenship program and director here at HB, so it's very important the work that we do, all the way from upper school, all the way down to high school. So there are different ways that all of our faculty, diversity liaisons are trying to integrate those things into the classroom. So it has definitely contributed to, in our primary school, at least to me, in my planning in terms of my Spanish curriculum and in terms of what I do with my diversity work, like those big ideas. Everything that I'm planning for my students, I am keeping those in mind. Previously, I was doing similar lessons, but not with this context, and it has definitely made a difference in making sure that I'm going deeper and asking those deeper questions about history and power and privilege.
Can I just add to
Yes.
that too? That Lavana also did a great assembly for the primary school kids about all of this. So the girls started asking them questions about this and wanting to find out more, because we're not going to take our young kids on trips.
Right.
But they can experience it through the teachers or the girls who go on these trips.
And we do still have spaces this summer if anybody is interested. They should let me know sooner than later. Deadlines.
What's the cost?
We offer scholarships, but the Savannah trip is $16.25 for the 5 days, and it's $2,500 for the DR. It doesn't include your airfare, but everything else is you land and everything's taken care of. And then we offer scholarships. Thank you so much for your time.